Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian from Malmen Air Base in Linköping, Sweden, where we are covering the 90th anniversary of the Swedish Air Force. In full disclosure, our trip here was sponsored by Saab. And we have with us now Peter Hultqvist, who is Sweden's Defense Minister. Sir, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
U.S. Vice President Biden was in Stockholm yesterday. I know that you met with him along with the rest of Sweden's leadership. One of the statements that Vice President Biden made was effectively to tell Russia, don't mess with Sweden. That even though Sweden isn't a NATO country, don't think you can pull anything on it. What does that statement from a Swedish perspective mean? Do you think that it contributes, for example, to your deterrent efforts?
I think it was a very, very good statement because it's a signal to the Russians that we have a strong transatlantic link and that it means something that we are cooperating together in the NATO partnership, but also on the bilateral level with the United States. So it was a very important signal, and it means also a lot to the other countries because it's a signal of that the United States has an interest what's happened in the northern part of Europe, and it's also a strategical question.
You were in Washington recently. You signed a defense agreement with the United States, a strategic cooperation agreement. Talk to us a little bit about when you expect to operationalize that agreement and why it's so important from your perspective and what each of the countries is looking to get out of it.
This is a statement of intent between Sweden and the United States. We have never had that before. But we have started working with it already. We exercise together, we have material cooperation, we have worked together in the international operations. So what we can say is that these statements make it very clear what we have done before and what we have the intention to do in the future. So it's connected to something that already happened, but also ambitions to the future. And Bolt-Ops is one exercise when we can do things together. Underwater exercise is another thing. Arctic Challenge exercise is an exercise in the air, and we have also said in the relation with the United States that we have an interest to develop Arctic Challenge exercise into the Northern Flag exercise, to step by step upgrade it.
Is this going to mark a shift in Sweden's attitude that historically has been never to use the word ally, to always use relationship? Does this signify a transition where Sweden is going to start looking at, whether it's the United States, but some of its other neighboring countries, as allies, ultimately?
We are not a member of a military alliance. We are non-allied in that way, but we are in the NATO partnership, and we have a bilateral relation with the United States, with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Denmark, Germany, Great Britain. We are members of the NORDEFCO, the Nordic Cooperation. So we are very active in different sort of international organizations, and also on a bilateral and multilateral level towards other countries. We are also involved in international operations if there is a decision in the United Nations and it's connected to what we can say international law and regulations. So we are partners in all this. And I don't know if the words are so important. The most important thing is that you do things together. And today we do a lot of things together with other countries. We deepening our relationship with Finland very, very deep. We have an agreement with the United States that we haven't had before. We have renewed our agreements with different countries. And we also signed an agreement with 53 topics the week after we signed with the United States. So then we signed with Great Britain. So I think we do a lot, try to build a security network around Sweden. And we know if we also do these sort of things and these sort of agreements, we must deliver from our side. And we see it like this, that we must, with the others, take responsibility for the security in our part of Europe.
Obviously, you just mentioned that Sweden has been working to increase its relationships and partnerships, both among the Nordic countries and Scandinavian countries, but also in the Baltics and extending to Poland as well. And you mentioned also Germany. Where do you want this network of partnerships? As you look, say, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, what do you envision these partnerships and relationships to look like?
You cannot say that exactly. You must renew the partnership all the time. You must exercise together, you must share information together, you must make security analysis together, you must do all these sort of things on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, and then you develop the partnership together. So you can never know, but the main goal is to higher the threshold, to create deterrence, and in that way also create stability and peace in a long time. So the goal is peace and stability, but you have to work for it from day to day. But you never know how the world changes. So it's a little bit complicated to say that we will be there in 5 years or there in 10 years. Peace is the goal, stability is the goal, and then we have to work with all the time with different sort of activities. And I think also we must be very flexible in this, to change, to ready to do something else that we have planned if it's needed. But if we have close connections, close contacts, then we can do things together if it's needed.
Russia has still been very, very provocative. We heard from the Canadian Air Chief just a short while ago. He was saying that the number of intercepts of Russian aircraft. He joked that he wishes Russian aircraft would file flight plans because it'll make the interceptions a little bit easier and more organized. The Supreme Commander, has said that it's really a significant challenge over the Baltic, given the irresponsibility of Russia's behavior. Do you think all of the actions that Sweden and all the nations in this region have been taking are an actual deterrent to Russia? Do you have any sense that the Russians are sort of getting the message here that everybody is really organizing, and do you see any change in their behavior? Because if I'm looking at it as an observer, they're using highly sophisticated information operations even in this country by either surrogates who are speaking, who are criticizing the government, for example. I was talking to somebody at Saab, and he said, if you look at listen to Russia's supporters, they keep portraying Saab as sort of not the kind of competent company it is. How do you respond to that? I mean, is this delivering the message to Moscow that you would like it to deliver?
I think that Moscow, they have their own plans, they have their own goals, they have their own strategy. They work with disinformation, they work with psychological warfare, they try to build up their capabilities, they exercise a lot. They started a SNAP exercise on a large scale yesterday. So I think that they have their own decisions, their own plans, and maybe they get the decisions and they see what we do. But I think the most important thing is that we do something and we do it together. And we from the Swedish perspective, we have two bones we work from. Number one is upgrading our own military capabilities, and number two is to deepening all these cooperations. And I think that this is important. I think that the signal is clear, that we see what is happening. Then they make their own conclusions of it, and we cannot do anything about that. But we see the development, and we act to make the threshold higher, and we see also that we will live with this for a long time. It will not go over tomorrow or something, because what they have shown is that they are ready to use military power to fulfill political goals with the annexation of Crimea. And we also have a conflict on a daily basis in Ukraine. People kills, people are wounded. This happened all the time, and I hope that the public opinion not forget this, because this is happening all the time, and we must in some way react on it and make our own conclusions and our own decisions, and that is exactly what we try to do now.
One of the points that you made the last few times that we've talked to each other was this notion of hybrid war, information, highly sophisticated information operations, and you said that, whether it's in an EU or a NATO context or a transatlantic context, we have to think about that as a challenge. Do you think any progress has been made on that front?
From our point of view, we are now members of the Stratcom in Riga, and we will be in this international environment that want to handling this sort of question and also do something about it. We also, in our MSB, it's one of our authorities for defense, we have also employed more people that are working with these sort of questions. And in Sweden, we have started a process to handle these sort of threats and also to defend ourselves from them. So we have started to work with a strategy, and we see now that this is a real problem. And I think that more and more also the public opinion see it. But I think that openness is very important in this question, because if you not are open about it and if you not show up the examples, this has happened, then I think it will be more theoretical than real. But with openness you can fight against it. You cannot fight against authoritarianism with authoritarianism own methods. You must have democratic methods.
Spoken like a true journalist. I want to take you to the point of improving Sweden's capabilities. There was a decision taken last year to add 10 billion crowns to the defense budget over the coming 10 years, which was very, very welcome relief for everybody who was looking at the size and capabilities of the Swedish military and wondering what track it was on. Is this money, though, safe from potential future cuts? Because at the time that was decided was before 167,000 refugees arrived in, just in the last year have arrived in Sweden. That's going to, that would tax a big nation, much less a small nation. And Vice President Biden noted that Sweden is really punching way above its weight in terms of absorbing the number of refugees. And obviously you're going to be co-chairing with the United States the refugee meeting that's coming up. Is the defense budget going to be safeguarded from cuts ultimately, or could the refugee crisis and the cost of the refugees end up taking money away from defense?
The refugee crisis will not take any money from defense. The defense bill will be intact because we have a five-party agreement, and it's a need for us to do these sort of things because there have been so many cuts during the years, and now we have a new security environment, and now we must fulfill these plans, because otherwise I think that we will come in a bad situation towards other countries, and it also have a connection to the confidence around the Swedish security policy. So it's very important that we now are working with these 10 billion Swedish crowns and deliver what we have said, and we will do that.
When you look at the size of the Swedish military, as a student of history, you once had the 5th largest air force in the world. The Swedish army was a very, very big army, and the whole force was big enough to act as a strategic deterrent, obviously, against the Russians. Don't touch the Swedish porcupine, because at the end of the day you're going to get stung very badly. Are you confident that the size of the Swedish military is as big as it needs to be today? And if not, how much more resources would be necessary to get it to the kind of size that, as opposed to sizing it to what you're paying, if you were going to truly size it for the mission, how much larger could that force or should that force be?
Very, very difficult to answer, but I think that the most important thing just now is to deliver for these 10.2 billion Swedish crowns. Because if we don't deliver for that, then we have no platform for the future. Next year I will elect a new defense commission, and they will prepare a new defense decision that will be valid during the years 2020 until 2025. So the platform for that will be these investments with the 10.2 billions. And what we are now doing is that we are exercising and make a higher level of capability on every unit in the armed forces. We invest in mortars, we invest in sea vessels, we invest in new submarines, we invest in next generation Gripen, we invest in short-range air missiles and middle-range air missiles. We are investing in the basic platform with a lot of ammunition and personal equipment for the soldiers. So we do a lot just now, and for me it's the most important thing is to deliver that before talking about the next step. But I understand also that we have a next step, and because of that I will elect a new Defense Commission that will prepare for a new decision.
For example, more than 60 Gripen E's?
We shall see. In the last Defense Commission it was discussed about 10 more, but it was also discussed about more submarines. It was also discussed about long-range missiles and a lot of very expensive weapon systems. So we have to come back to that question and see what priorities they will suggest to the government. But we have next year these decisions that I have planned, and I will work from the platform of what we have done with these 10.2 billion.
Let me ask you one last question about missile defense. The Russians have been obviously talk a lot about the Iskander ballistic missile, which can be conventional or it can be nuclear tipped. You in your talk mentioned the irresponsibility of Russia continually talking about tactical nuclear or introduction of tactical nuclear weapons. And Sweden historically hasn't been like a lot of other countries that has invested heavily in missile defense. Given that your fixed bases could be vulnerable to such a ballistic missile, does Sweden need to consider a much more potent air and missile defense system in a national defense context?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We have to think about a lot of things. First, we have to deliver from these defense decisions. Then we also have to prepare for something new in the next Defense Commission's work. So we have to do these two things. And you can always put the finger on weaknesses. And I think that that's one of the things we have to make analysis of in the future now. But if we do not deliver what we already had decided, then I think we have problems to go further. But I see that we have many things that we have to handle. And one part of it is the national dimension with our own national decisions and our own national capability. But it's also very important what we can do with other countries. For example, with Finland, we now are building a naval unit that we can use together, a Swedish-Finnish naval unit. I don't know if we also can find ways to cooperate around material. That can be something also, but we are not there yet.
Let me ask you one last question. It is the 90th anniversary, or we just passed the 90th anniversary of the Swedish Air Force. How critical is the Air Force, and how critical a role has the Air Force played throughout Swedish history in the defense of the country?
Yeah, this is the first front line in defense. The Air Force meet a potential enemy and want to defend Sweden, defend the sovereignty and delay them and maybe push them back. So Air Force is very important, and Gripen E has another capability than Gripen CD. It's a aircraft that is competitive with the others around the Baltic Sea, and because we see also this technological development, and if we not have competitive aircrafts, then we are in a very bad shape if something will happen.
Sir, thanks very much for joining us, and best of luck on the defense plan.
Thank you so much.